Hello, everybody. Welcome. Tesla is up 1%. Markets are flat. Megatech companies are up slightly. Apple, Amazon 1%. Meta up 2%. Google, Microsoft, Nvidia flat. Intel is down 7% today. Disney down 2%. The rest of the market is mixed. The yield curve was up substantially this morning, but it's back to about flat today. 10-year Treasury yield is at 4.36%. Mortgage applications index came in slightly lower, which is expected with mortgage rates above 7% again. ADP employment change. So this is an employment data report week. ADP is announced on Wednesdays, came in at 184,000 jobs added in March, slightly higher than expected. S&P Global US Services PMI was at 51.7. Non-manufacturing PMI for ISM at 51.4, slightly lower than expected. If you can't hear me on YouTube Live, please let me know. All right, looks like people can hear me. Good. Any questions, comments? Please request to speak. I think ACDC had a question yesterday we didn't get to. Maybe we can start with that today if he wants to come up. Or any takeaways from yesterday's space, you're welcome to come up. Share your views. Mhm. I'm interested in hearing people's thoughts on how yesterday's discussion went, if they learned anything new and material, what do they think of the bear arguments from Gordon Johnson and others, Motherhead. We had a handful of bears yesterday, which is interesting. That's the first. We had 15,000 people that tuned in live. And I think the total with recording replays is now above 20,000. That's pretty amazing. Meta is here. Let's see if he wants to come up. Hey, how's it going?
Good. I feel like I'm so behind on quote unquote homework. I have not had a chance to listen to the whole space and I couldn't be in there yesterday and I'm super like jealous, but I plan to listen to it more this weekend. It's like on my podcast listening top priority. I also just want to say thank you for making the space, hosting the space. I hope it didn't seem like I was just dropping because of the conversation itself. It's just I had a busy day. And I was trying to
No,
squeeze
it
in
was
minutes where I
perfect.
could. But you did a
Yeah.
great job. You did a really good job. And you know what? I will say for the brief moments I was present, Machine did a really good job too. Everybody did a really good job of
Yeah.
being level-headed. I know
Yeah,
we
it was
joke
really good.
around about Machine, but Machine, obviously, there's a reason why he's in this space. Like you only tease the people you respect because otherwise it'd be really dumb.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. If I don't feel close to somebody, I kind of just ignore them if I disagree with something because there's no point in going back and forth. But if I'm teasing
Yeah.
somebody, that's obviously because there's a close relationship, I think.
Yeah.
So, um, man, there's definitely a big crack in the bear argument when it comes to FSD. It looks like
I
he had
found
no idea what he
Grant.
was talking about.
Yeah, I found Grant and Motorhead, at least for the portions that I was there. I wasn't there for much of Motorhead. They were much more level-headed about their conversation, but like Gordon Johnson just like there's one thing to say, I've watched interviews and somebody's doesn't come off authentic. For me, there was a couple of moments where it just really felt dodgy. And when you're watching an interview, you can't ask the follow-up. So when I was asking him a question, I asked a follow-up, and he's the inconsistency of I consult AI experts, but I'm not going to tell you what the qualifications of the AI experts are. Oh, and Tesla's not an AI company, so it's an irrelevant conversation. Yet I consult AI expert. It's very difficult to me to rationalize that somebody can hold all those beliefs and not be duplicitous in some way.
Hmm.
They're lying, and he's not that dumb.
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see. I don't want to personalize it. Like, I don't want to personalize that he's being,
Fair,
deceitful, etc. So,
fair. Let me put it back. It's logically inconsistent to a point where it makes me question the rest of the statements.
right. Yeah, exactly. Ron Tucker.
Yeah, I just thought you guys were letting him get away with way too much yesterday, and I loved it when Adrian came on and just destroyed him and made him quit. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
I
All
I
right,
don't.
thank you.
I think he already had to go at some point. To be clear, also, I don't think it's wrong. I think I saw a lot of people commenting to that degree for Yaman, so I'll just say the
Well,
opposite.
there were actually the thing is what people don't realize is that I get to see all the comments and all the replies, whereas most people just see their own feedback when they reply. They don't really take the time to kind of go through other replies. And there were feedback on both sides. Like there was feedback on people praising the fact that we had an equal number of bulls and bears, which is a first. I mean, I've never seen that in any space before on Tesla or any platform. And then there were people who, why did you let him go? Why didn't you just cut him off? I'm like, first of all, I did cut him off a couple of times. And secondly, I explained why. There were times we had one bear and 8 bulls. Well, in that situation, I think it's reasonable to give the bear a bit more time per person than the bulls. And overall, the bulls still had more time and everything. My wish is that we have an even amount of time allocation going forward. So I thought that's like that bull versus bear discussion on Tesla was the most respectful, most fruitful discussion ever happened on any platform.
I agree.
Yesterday's space.
I think he struck a really good balance of being balanced and fair without the assumption that equal time is fair or that both points are valid. So
Right.
I really respect that. By the way, Omar is in the audience. I know you can't always see him, but just letting you know.
Oh yeah. When is he gonna get a check mark back? Where
You
is
could
he?
also, if you follow him, you'll also see him pop up higher.
Oh, there he is. Why is he all the way down over there? Oh, that's right. Okay. All right. All right, Omar, how are you?
I'm good.
All right, so he's eating lunch. ACDC, go ahead. Let's start with ACDC's question because we kind of cut it off right before it was his turn yesterday.
Yeah, man. Actually, like I said, I did not really have a question, just had a comment. If you don't mind, can I take a couple of minutes just to talk?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So just as my background, first of all, I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm a newer member to the community, a new Tesla owner. I've been an owner for 6 months. I follow the stock just because of my profession forever. I've only invested in it once. And as far as my profession goes, I'm a financial advisor. I've been doing this for 25 years. And now finally being an owner of a Tesla, I'm like more interested in actually the technology in the future. Okay, so that's my background. But the comment that I had yesterday was, I think someone said something about, the whole political dilemma with Elon and his tweets and everything. And personally, as much interested as I have been in owning a Tesla, it was like I was exploring the waters and I really did not want to take the dive. But what really interested me in Tesla or helping pull the trigger was Elon kind of paying attention to a lot of the other issues that are plaguing the whole country now. And I completely share his sentiment that if those things aren't taken care of, EV industry or any industry is not going to really matter in this country. So that's what really sparked my interest, and I wanted to back him and support a company whose CEO actually not only has a great vision for the company, but also wants to do better for the country. Okay. So when people say that he's losing people, I don't think so. Most of the liberals own Teslas because they know Teslas are the best EVs. They're not going to go buy something else. And in fact, he's probably gaining people by appealing to the right and to a whole different subset of people and attracting them to the brand. So that was my comment just on that note. And if you want me to talk about anything else, I'd be more than happy to.
That's great. Thank you very much for sharing your views on that. It's really interesting because one of the, sometimes, we kind of remember these quotes and moments from decades ago. And one of the moments for me is back in middle school, we were having a bit of a career discussion with our favorite teacher, our entire class was. And, people were asking, how about this industry? How about that career, etc. And somebody asked about politics. Should we go into politics? And this teacher says, I used to tell people not to go into politics because it's such a shit show. But because educated people started avoiding politics is how we ended up with where we are today, with the politics that we have today, where, people in charge don't have a good understanding of, how these tech companies even work, let alone regulate or make laws. So I think that, that also applies to CEOs of these companies in most countries, where they try to strike this moderate, balanced, don't shake the boat kind of attitude, which obviously isn't Elon. And, it may work in the shorter term, but, in the longer term, I think it's okay I agree with the sentiment that you presented. I just want to share that kind of historical anecdote. Wes, that meta, that machine.
Yeah, it was good to hear the new speaker come up. I wanted to ask them a quick question. And this might seem a little off topic, but I assure you it's meaningful as an engineer. I'm wondering why folks invest in tech, like what drives them to do that, and maybe specifically like what drove the last speaker, sorry, I don't remember their name, to invest in Tesla. And maybe as a contextual point, also say very simply why they invested in Apple, because I'm sure they did. But I'd like to know their viewpoint on that.
So in my 25 years, there's a difference between a serious investor, a speculative investor, or a seasonal investor. Okay. A serious investor usually has a diversified portfolio of stocks, and that will include tech. Okay. Apple is one of the biggest holdings of most of my clients, but that wasn't because they went and sought Apple. Okay, it just became one of the biggest holdings over time. Okay, what has happened over the last, I mean, it happened in 2000 with the .com and the internet and the online trading, and now with all this Robinhood and everything else, there's a lot of seasonal investors or not serious investors, I would say, and they're not really driven in terms of investing in it. They're more driven in terms of speculating. Okay, and the sad thing about that is that they usually get into a stock when there's hype, and usually it's the time that you don't want to hold the stock, and then the average investor kind of or the non-serious investor go through those cycles of it. So, I mean, that's what really gets it going. Like NVIDIA is right now the hottest stock that everybody wants to talk about. Okay. Personally, I'm not touching it. But that's just how it kind of goes. So it's not really that investors go after tech. It just ends up being, especially certain names, and end up being a big part of their portfolio.
Wes, do you have a follow-up, or should I go on to Meta?
No, it's very helpful. So maybe quick follow-up. So would you say that the choices are not engineering based?
No, not for your average investor. They are not.
Cool. And that's what I wanted to know.
Right.
Yeah.
No, and that's why, believe me, I spend a lot of time on these calls, because if I am going to make a significant decision in participating in a company's investment, I do want to know that. So as a financial advisor, that's kind of like what my role is, because the average investor, they just don't. They literally will watch the CNBC headlines, and those people are touting it at its peak. When it's time to buy, they'll never talk about it. In fact, they'll be bashing that stock.
Meta.
Yeah, I was going to just mention to an earlier point you made, Yaman. We know that Elon went to an engineering university in Canada, and in those universities, they actually teach you as engineers, like your professional organization. There's an oath you take. There's all these kinds of things you do, and part of that process is actually a discussion about how engineers have a responsibility to consider running in politics and being involved in politics, and that because you now have this skill set to think scientifically, to think with first principles, etc. It's like when somebody becomes a boxer, their arms are like classified as legal weapons. The argument is your brain is now qualified as you don't get to opt out and not participate in politics. You don't get to look the other way and say ignorance is bliss. Sorry. And so to a lot of people who say he should just not get involved, they don't understand that part of his duty is to stay involved. And most other companies don't have engineers as CEOs who have gone through professional training as engineers. So you just got to decide, do you want engineers to run companies or not?
Machine Ken Omar.
I missed. Can you hear me?
Yes.
You don't have to
It
say
says
if we can hear you in
I
this
know.
space. It's very easy to know.
It says muted. All right. I missed the first part of this, but I will just say Elon Musk is being the scapegoat right now of all this, and it's just kind of intellectually lazy, in my opinion, to blame it all on him and not actually study the real reasons why there's issues with, let's say, demand. And I just don't find it that interesting. Like, yeah, the guy said some things that people disagree with, and sure, has that turned off some buyers, but it's not. I've said this many times. The demand for EVs in general is down massively. You see all these other companies slow down their programs. You see EV only companies like Rivian massively cut back on their growth. Like, this is the main thing that needs to be talked about, and the reasons why that's happening. Not, oh, did some people get their upset at Elon? He said the wrong thing, and now they're not going to buy another Tesla.
And
Hey,
Yeah, there's,
oops.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I thought yesterday's space was the best that's been produced so far, and compliment Yaman on his very professional moderation of the group. And to the everybody who was on the panel yesterday, you did a superb job. Everybody was very professional. The conversation moved along. It was never boring. You went through the topics as they were presented, presenting pros and cons of each topic. Everybody did a great job, and I loved how Yaman controlled Gordon. I've watched Gordon for years on so many television shows being interviewed, and his role was always over talking the other person's points. Yaman handled him very great. Gordon was able to make his points, and I think Gordon did a good job. I thought he was very professional and very articulate with what he was facing with the board. He made his point, and then the board had a counterpoint, and you actually got to evaluate his argument point by point and actually hear it, see it, and understand it, which when he goes on these other shows, he doesn't allow. So I think that was Gordon giving Yaman a huge respect for how he changed his style of presentation to allow for those one-on-one questions. So that to me was a huge thing.
thank you very much, Ken.
You did a good job. I think now that you've finally shaved off all that horrific hair, maybe you can find a place on CNBC.
That's nice of you to say, Machine. Let's go to Omar.
Yeah, I was going to comment on the space. I thought it was great to have bulls and bears talking to each other. There's really only so much we can gain from just sort of circle jerking each other, and we're already all convinced, right? So having a bull bear debate, I could see in the audience people who are not just Tesla bulls, people coming in across the spectrum to listen, people who are maybe in the middle. If we can convince somebody new to take a position in Tesla or to buy a Tesla product, then we've actually accomplished something. So, to the people who said, okay, well, we shouldn't have let him speak so much. I liked when Adrian came and owned him or whatever. That may be how we perceive it. But I mean, I actually found it kind of embarrassing when people were just kind of trying to make fun of them or whatever rather than just debate their points. Because they put themselves on the record very clearly. They said autonomy is not going to happen. It's 10 to 20 years away. FSD is not even AI, right? And sometimes you just got to let them speak and let them hang themselves, I think. So I think it was great. And I agree, it really did showcase Yuman's moderating skills, which I think is one of the reasons I always come to this space is his moderation. And Gordon always, whenever he's in any space, it just is him interrupting and talking over and saying all this bullshit that's not true, but he just sort of overpowers them. So I think just having a sort of even discussion about the points, the arguments fall pretty flat. And you look at the market reaction today, I think some of the people who listen to this space looked at what was said. They look at what the bears are saying about FSD. They look at what the bulls are saying, and they look at the videos, and they kind of form their own opinion about what's going to happen. So I thought it was a great space. It's not surprising it was the biggest ever, and I think we should continue to, you know, allow this kind of debate to happen and encourage it. Some people say, oh, the bulls are in an echo chamber. If they believe Tesla has a bright future, it must be because they're only looking at the positive sides and not discussing any of the negatives. And they're just in this total echo chamber when that's not what I've found in the Tesla community at all. Like some of the the bulls that I talk to the most are really critical thinkers. They don't just accept things. They think through things themselves. They've looked at all the data and they've arrived at this conclusion. And contrary to shutting out opposing viewpoints, they're inundated with this sort of negativity constantly. And we take in all of it. So I thought it was great. I think we should do more of it.
Thanks, everyone. This is awesome. All that feedback, really, really good. More detailed, the better. What did you like? What would you have preferred? More detailed feedback, the better. And if you'd like to support the space, you may do so at the link at the top of your screens. Machine West Meta.
I just want to say, biggest space ever. Speaking of biggest ever, your mom. Oh, never mind.
Wes.
Yeah, kudos, Yaman. That was really good yesterday. And I'm not sure how you got the Bears in, but it'd be fun to do it again. I love the structure. I love the way that they were, eloquent in their points. I think that is really great to say things as objectively as possible. Like that's kind of how you build your kind of foundation for how you think about the world. You kind of have to build something objectively, and then you get into the subjective part. And this is the way that the discussion seemed to go, at least for me, because I could feel the subjectiveness coming in, and I appreciated that. And everybody's obviously, good with their own opinion. It's just really interesting to me that I haven't yet heard a bear speak from an engineering perspective, and that's what I was kind of looking for. And I'm also trying to understand why people invest in Tesla and they don't know anything about engineering. So I'm also interested in that, but I thought it was great. I look forward to doing it again.
Thank you. Yeah, not all bulls are the same, not all bears are the same. And even though we had, 4 or 5 bears on the board yesterday, there were 5 more requesting to speak. But I'm familiar with each account because I've been around for almost a decade now. So I know which ones are more eloquent and can actually hang with the bulls on this board and at least respect the rules of the space and not get into a yelling match. So I was selective in which bears came up and presented opinions.
I think
Meta?
sorry. I was gonna say, I think you did a good job in the same vein with the bulls. I know I was only in briefly at different times, but even when I was on the board, I had to continue to remind myself to emotionally calm. And I'm sure, as somebody who's so passionate about this, that was not an easy task. So big kudos for what you pulled off. And the other thing I just want to point out is a really big thank you to Omar, because ever since you gave a machine that ride, his thoughtfulness and his eloquence is just like really elevated to a new level. One could almost say you must go into an FSD to like shake off the silly thought process.
I literally just made a mom joke.
Yes, but it was more eloquent than your previous mom jokes.
Someone says Gordon versus Machine Cage match. Alan Mobley says on YouTube Live. All right.
I would destroy him. Give me a break.
Mike, did you have anything to say?
Not really, Yaman. Everyone has kind of given a good summary of yesterday's space. It was phenomenal. It was great. The value, obviously, that we all gained from it was what everyone's mentioned. Really no engineering information analysis regarding FSD and AI. Specifically, Meta, myself, and others asked numerous times of Gordon's sources for his bearishness on regards to Tesla's AI efforts. He refused to disclose the names of any of his experts, nor was he willing to disclose what information those quote unquote experts delivered to him to inform his opinion, his bearish opinion regarding Tesla's AI. So I walked away even more confident that the bears The bears are just using very kindergarten analysis, number of disengagements per mile, and biased websites from 10 years ago. So it was phenomenal, and that I think we all took away that the engineering analysis and AI analysis that's valuable is from people like Wes and Meta and Omar and Yaman and others, and of course Machine. So yeah, it was confirming. It was very confirmational that we're on the right path.
Thank you, Nick. Then ACDC, then David Tech.
I mean, I think you did all right. You did all right. Kind of what I would have rather seen is you kick like Gordon down or you kick someone off the board. That's what I was waiting for. I was waiting for that moment when.
Well, I didn't have to do that because Adrian asked why, and he left. So.
I was just waiting for that moment for you to like kick someone off. That would have been great. But
I don't know if I kicked anyone off yesterday.
I know. I'm surprised. You had your chance with all those people watching.
How are you?
I'm doing good. Doing good. Still waiting for the baby. It hasn't popped out yet. So, but what I thought was interesting is the like none of the Bears could really say like anything positive about Tesla, or at least Gordon for the most part. Like there's obviously Model Y is the world's best-selling car. Like there was like nothing, like he's so ingrained with being negative. There's like nothing positive you could say, or nothing like factually that he could say or admit, or at least didn't want to admit. That is very interesting.
Thank you. ACDC.
Yeah, man. Just wanted to share a couple things. I don't even think that Gordon is a qualified bear because, like the previous speaker said, that he did not really have anything credible really to offer. I mean, for a person who doesn't understand AI and supposedly has AI experts, his most positive thing, I think, when that question was asked, as if he can think of anything positive about Tesla or Elon, was that he thinks Elon is a great salesman. So, I mean, he's completely not credible. But as an observance of mine, what I'm seeing from two sides of the bears versus the bulls on the Tesla front is this. The bulls love Tesla technology, okay? And sure enough, it is the best. There's nobody even close to it, okay? But they equate it to the stock price, a lot of them at least, okay? They think because it's the best technology, the stock should be doing the best. And whereas the bears, it's the opposite. They have no idea about how good the technology is. And all they think about is that the stock price should just be low. So there's definitely a disconnect. And one thing that I've said, as I will reply to many posts on, and I always give this advice to everyone that I run across to, that never equate a product of a company or a great company for its stock price. There could be a complete disconnect, especially at varying times, okay? So just like right now, I think it's very positive that Tesla actually did not sell off. I think it hardly sold off, considering it's trying to rebound today, on such a horrific quarter, okay? Which tells me that finally the street is trying to pay some premium on the future potential growth of it, okay? I just think that it is weighed down a little bit right now because the same news outlets that used to talk about every technology that Tesla would announce at length are now bashing him, okay? So this community is, of course, a strong supporter of Tesla and of Elon, but it's a very small community. If you look at 90+% of the mainstream media, they're all against him. And unfortunately, that will weigh on the stock. And I think that also takes away that growth potential or future prospects premium that was always given to Tesla for the time being.
Thank you, ACDC. I think that's a really good summary. We have a question from YouTube live chat, but let's go through the hands first. And thank you, Drew Soul, for your contribution on YouTube live as well. Drew Soul has been a great supporter of the space. And if you'd like to join Drew in supporting the space, you can do so at the top of your screens. Machine, David Katz, Wes, Nick, and then we have a question about Tesla AI engineers to XAI.
I agree with a lot of what ACDC said. You know, I just think people end up becoming fans, like they're rooting for sports teams, and you want your team to win, and people kind of lose a bit of the rationality there sometimes. And sometimes you really limited that discussion yesterday, which was great. But in terms of then, you know, you root for a team, but in this case, you know about the team, you know how the great engineering, all the products are great. But you really still have to go back and say, what is a fair valuation for this company? It's great that the Model Y is the best-selling car in the world. There's the most efficient gigacastings underneath, 48-volt technology in the Cybertruck, all these things. But it still comes back to how much money are they going to make in the next few years? And that is going to dictate what the market thinks about the company. And if you don't care about the short term at all, if you don't care about the stock price today, tomorrow, this year, or even next year, and you just care about 2030, then sure, you know, focus mostly on FSD. But those things, people can't be like, I'm just going to ACDC saying, yeah, you can't expect the stock price to go with the great technology. Like, in fact, the stock price could stay flat, even if the engineering technology is superb.
All right. David Katz.
Thank you. Obviously, good job from everyone, and a great room to learn how the other side thinks and hear their words. But to me, as I listened, there was kind of an arc to the stream. And when Meta and others pressed him, you know, who are your sources? Why do you think that way? Why do you even say these words? What basis in truth? And they got him to admit, you know, that Tesla doesn't use AI, that the robotics are not real, that Elon is, you know, a charlatan, the wizard behind the curtain. That was, to me, the most revealing part of really how empty. And it I'm trying to think in his mind, why are you fueled with so much of not only wrong information, but it comes down to dislike and I almost obviously hatred for something going on with either Elon or Tesla that isn't rational. And so that part to me was really the seminal part.
All right. Nick West. Nicholas.
Just in from Guru Watcher. What exactly was it? It was Apple is looking at humanoid robots as the home robots as the next big thing. What Gordon said was a was a scam.
Interesting. We'll look into that. Yeah, 18 minutes ago. All right. There's a question in the YouTube live chat from Nibal Salha. What do you think of Tesla AI engineers going to XAI? So there's a specific post that he referred to from Sawyer, and the next person who's on queue to speak, Wes, would be a good person to ask this question to. And Sawyer's post says, according to the information, Tesla's computer vision chief, Ethan Knight, has left Tesla and joined Elon Musk's XAI company. Wes, what do you think?
So just to be super blunt, Elon gives flexibility to engineers to move around. So sometimes, you know, people are needed in certain places, and the engineers understand that. They understand where their expertise and their prowess is needed. But other times, engineers need to move on to something else, you know, to as you know, their intuition or their their passion takes them. And it's nice to see that he's moving to another Elon-led company, because Elon-led companies are an engineer's playground. So they, you know, these guys can, or these folks can do, you know, whatever they want as long as they're progressing the code. And so that's kind of my simple answer to that question.
Thank you. Let's go to Omar.
Yeah, so just really quickly, Gordon sells his research to shorts. A lot of these institutional investors, they're just shorting. They don't feel passionate about it. They're just trying to make money and they don't want to make their firm look bad. So they'll pay a firm like Gordon for his quote unquote research to basically just be as negative as possible, go on TV, go out there, and they'll pay him to do that. He doesn't actually take a position. Whether the stock goes down isn't his concern. But the people that are betting against the company can essentially fund him to go do this. Now, on the engineering thing, so this is one guy who went to XAI right now in March, they said, and there were 3 other people there who were from Tesla, but I'm not really overly concerned about this right now, to be honest. I mean, the first thing to understand about Silicon Valley is engineers move between companies all the time. Like a typical tenure for an engineer is like a few years. And that doesn't matter if you're at Google, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, right? People go back and forth. One of the things that really made Silicon Valley what it was is there's no non-competes. Non-competes are illegal. A non-compete clause in a contract says you can't go work for a competing company. We don't have that. So, people move back and forth a lot. And
Elon added some context to this reply to the post. Let me just interject that in there, and then, Omar, you can continue. Elon says, Ethan was going to join OpenAI, so it was either XAI or them. They have been aggressively recruiting Tesla engineers with massive compensation offers and have unfortunately been successful in a few cases. Oh my God.
yeah, exactly. I mean, that was one of the things I was going to mention. But, Tesla has always had this kind of offer that you can move back between different companies. So you've had, Tesla engineers go to SpaceX, SpaceX engineers go to Tesla, other Musk companies, Neuralink, whatever. And they've called it kind of like a transfer program or whatever. So okay, if you get bored, instead of going to OpenAI or something, if you want to go work on LLMs, just come to XAI, and it's kind of just an automatic approval. We already know you. We know you're exceptional. So there's not like some type of mass poaching going on where taking the Tesla AI team and trying to move it to a different company that Musk controls. I mean, we're talking about one guy here in March who wanted to go work on something else. And I mean, just look at what everyone's been saying about FSD. Are we seriously going to sit here and say they're not doing their job, or they're not executing well, or that they're sacrificing resourcing? I mean, Tesla can hire as many people as they want. They're not really constrained by engineers anymore. This isn't the kind of situation with 11 where you have a lot of people writing a bunch of C++ code or doing a lot of debugging. Increasingly, they're just moving to an approach where training does all the heavy lifting. So I don't think it's really that concerning. I see this as kind of normal. It's something that has happened for some time, but it's one of those stories that I think is going to be sensationalized a little bit, with Elon's comments, oh, he's going to take Tesla AI and move it out of Tesla, those kinds of comments. But yeah.
Let's take a quick question or comment from Dodge Army, and then we're going to go to K10, Meta, then Wes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say yesterday was awesome. Gordon has been around for a long time, at least 5 or 6 years. He's an articulate guy. He's a perma bear. There's nothing that anyone could ever say to convince him that his opinion is wrong. And he's invited on CNBC and all these other Yahoo Finance channels, whatnot, because he is a bear and he is paid by short sellers to, promote his position. And so, it's interesting though, when we asked him, what Elon's motivation was, and he said, well, I believe that Elon and Tesla are completely above the law. They can do anything they want, which is just like a crazy thing to say. And that the only reason that Elon is doing what he's doing is to pump the stock up and keep it up, because if it goes down, then there's going to be, all these lawsuits. I mean, it just doesn't make any logical sense. Clearly.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
You're welcome.
K10.
Thanks, Yaman, for inviting me up. Yeah, I agree with what Doge was saying down there. Gordon has been saying these same things for years. For those who have been around and actually fighting the FUD, Gordon Johnson is just literally stating everything he's always said. And I appreciate the bears are welcome to come on here and say things, but it kind of reveals where they're at. And for all the Tesla bulls that you're questioning things and you're doubting and you're starting to believe some of these Tesla Q narratives, I mean, I hope you feel yourself just as foolish. I'm sorry, but to believe these things, I mean, listen to what Gordon said. He literally believes Tesla does not have an AI and it is not an AI company. And that itself speaks volumes. And I'm glad Elon just answered that question above, because all this gloom and doom about people saying, oh, Tesla engineers are going over to XAI, and Elon keeps on doing this. Like Omar was stating earlier, this has been going on for decades. This is what they do. This is what Silicon Valley does. This is what Elon does with his engineers. And they're welcome to come and go. But I think people should look at this as a good moment for FSD. The fact that the engineers feel like they can move on to something, because a lot of these bright engineers love to solve problems, and when they see the light at the end of the tunnel, they want to move on to something else that they can build. And I think FSD is doing that well. So I think this is a good moment.
Thank you, Kristen. Quick word of thank you to Morty and MJ who joined Patreon. If you'd like to join them, you can do so at the top of your screens. West and Meta.
Yeah, and I wanted to add that I really kind of didn't understand why Gordon was so kind of off in the weeds. And I think I get it now. There's just no engineering there. And I'm completely engineering based. In fact, so much so that I want folks to understand that I don't invest in Elon companies or work at Elon companies because of Elon. I work there because of the culture that he sets. It's pure engineering. And that's why I buy the products. That's why I use the products. That's why 3.3 is absolutely driving me right now amazingly. So it's just completely disconnected from engineering, what he's talking about. And I think for anybody who wants to understand what's happening in our technology-led world now, you kind of have to understand some of these fundamentals, or you're just going to get lost really fast or get caught up in the hype. So that's what I had to say.
All right. Okay, thank you. All right, let's move on from speaking about yesterday's space, and let's focus on the forward, like what's happening, the news happening today. And like, for example, one way we can switch the topic a little bit and maybe the tone a little bit too is, maybe as Meta speaks, and now I'm going to go to Sawyer. Wes, maybe you can answer the question. What fundamental fact would you tell Gordon or other bears? What fundamental fact do you think they're missing? I guess that's an obvious, easy answer here is that, he literally said FSD is not AI.
Yeah, AI is.
And then someone in the reply said, are they using VLOOKUP on Excel spreadsheets?
Currently, AI is kind of indistinguishable from a human response, outside of hallucinations, which are getting less and less. But it really is indistinguishable. And I think the point is that Tesla's AI in FSD right now is becoming indistinguishable from human driving. And so there's no way to code that. But a non-engineer wouldn't know that there's no way to code that. They just wouldn't know.
Yeah.
They would have no idea because they don't understand how their phone works. They don't understand how a toaster really works and all of the things that go along into that. My car is getting mad at me because I held my phone too close to my face. But yeah,
Meta.
Yep.
Yeah, just a quick comment, maybe a slightly different perspective on this. While I agree that people move between companies, I don't know why Tesla shareholders, just coming from like a shareholder perspective, should care if the engineer went to a Elon company or an OpenAI. In theory, if XAI gave a better offer than OpenAI, then that would mean that the friction to leave Tesla was even lower than it would have been to go to an OpenAI, where the culture may not have been as nice and the engineer may not have wanted to go. So you can, like, just playing devil's advocate, you could see if Elon said, look, this is where I need you to focus. If you're at this company, you can't go to these other companies. That, of course, that's got some problems with non-compete. So there's a lot of complication there. The real thing I think we need to look at is Tesla shareholders, I think en masse, would be okay with a lot, like the retail shareholders would be okay with a lot of what Elon wants to do living inside the same company. maybe Elon doesn't want that because of various reasons like scrutiny or, public markets, or the institutional investors don't want that. But this conflict, I think, is worth addressing, exists, and it probably needs to be addressed before there's some kind of like legal issue that could arise, in my opinion.
Thank you. Sawyer.
Just quickly on the Ethan Knight story. If you look at the email exchanges between Elon and Sam Altman, who's OpenAI CEO, many years ago, Elon shared concerns that the only way to attract top talent and be competitive, back then, was to offer really high pay and good compensation packages. And Ethan Knight, Tesla's computer vision chief who left last month, he joined Tesla in March of 2020 as an intern, and then he quickly rose through the ranks. So he'd been at Tesla for about 4 years, and that's usually the turnover time for someone in Silicon Valley. It's pretty rare actually for a Silicon Valley employee to be at a company there for more than 4 or 5 years. So, and Tesla's AI team is only a few hundred people. They have a really highly efficient team there. I don't really personally worry if a few people end up leaving or getting poached. I think the progress has been really good lately and will likely continue to get faster and faster because they're no longer compute constrained. So even though this is a story, I don't really worry about it too much.
Thank you. And thank you, Sam, for joining Patreon. Omar and Meta.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like there is a little bit of sort of a misconstruction going on here. People want to make it seem like, okay, he's doing something wrong. He's poaching a bunch of people from the AI team. When, they're talking about one guy who went in March. That's the news story here. And Elon's adding the context that OpenAI was making him an offer. He probably wanted to go work on LLMs. And everybody's tweeting right now, oh my God, they stole Ethan Knight. Who the hell is Ethan Knight? Did anybody know who he was before this? And I just think we're kind of in a FUD war too right now. If you think about what happened in 2018, 2019, it was kind of like a FUD war. And the Bulls won, the stock shot up, the company didn't go bankrupt. And it kind of feels like we're in a FUD war too right now. And a lot of effort is going into, I think, creating a divide between Elon and Tesla shareholders as a way to slow down the company, maybe get him fired, something like that. I think the results of the team really speak for themselves, and I don't think there's some sort of mass poaching of, Tesla engineers going on. I mean, maybe if we saw a trend, we saw FSD continue to suffer and we saw more and more people leaving for XAI, then we could say, okay, something smells funny here. But so far, it seems pretty normal. It's typical in Silicon Valley. You kind of vest out your compensation package, you vest out your options, and then you move. And it's commonly understood that you're not getting paid as much as you could if you don't move every 4 years or so once your incentive package vests or once you're ready to move on. So I don't see it as all that unusual or anything to be concerned about yet. And I think the AI team is just executing phenomenally.
Meta.
There are many folks, especially in the AI space, that are like tenured at companies like Microsoft, Google, etc. While it's true that the compensation packages tend to be 4 years, and so people tend to leave at the 3-year mark because just the way, I forget the details, but just the way the compensation structures work, there's an incentive to leave at 3 versus 4. There is this concept of boosters, which you tend to give to your high performing engineers, and those boosters fill those gaps. So properly incentivized engineers don't leave. So I agree with what is being said, but another way to look at it is to say, is Tesla paying enough to keep the Carpathies? Are they building LLMs? Because, between Tim Zaman, Andre Karpathy, Ethan, I forget the other guy's name, Darwa. There's been like 4 or 5 significant departures. So I think, just being level-headed, there are people leaving that are talented. Maybe they're not being compensated enough. Maybe the projects aren't challenging enough. But I would argue with Optimus there's no reason why these people should be going to build an LLM at an XAI or at a OpenAI. Elon is more than capable of selling them that Optimus is a better project to work on. So the fact that they're leaving it all, it is a little bit of cause of worry.
All right. Thank you, Sasha Plague, for joining Patreon. I'll give a word to Omar, and then Omar, there's also a question that replies that I'm guessing a lot of people who are new to the stock don't really know what this is about. Can you also elaborate on what Operation Vacation is, but just a few sentences if you can?
Sure. So, the first point is I don't see the level of departures as that unusual or excessive. You can look back at the history of the autopilot team and say, oh my God, Andre Karpathy left. The project is doomed. Instead, we've seen the best results since he left. You could go back even further than that and said, oh my God, they lost Chris Latner. Chris Latner, the star who created LLVM. And, the project hadn't even gotten started at that point, right? So there have been a lot of great people. I mean, even JB who've come and gone from Tesla. And that's just kind of how Silicon Valley is, right? I think Tesla's a place where you come and do your best work, you work super hard, and it's not supposed to be really, that sustainable of a thing. I think you come when you're ready to do exceptional work. And like that clip from Karpathy, they always bias towards subtracting from the team, just like with the products. And they don't want to keep people around for, decades doing nothing. So, and then Operation Vacation is essentially an idea that Andre Karpathy talked about in some of his tech talks. The idea is, can we create a system that is so streamlined and so automated that if the entire engineering team went on vacation, the system would continue improving itself? So data comes in of interventions, they source the data, add it to the training set, train a new model, push it out. The entire engineering team's on vacation, and the software got better by itself. So that's the idea of Operation Vacation. I'm not sure how fully it's been realized, but you can see obviously with the new end-to-end approach that something like this could actually be possible, where you have, the data set increase, more training done, and an improved version of the model comes out without any code changes.
Thank you. Kristen, then Wes.
Yeah, I just wanted to address a little bit of what Meta said. I mean, I am not in the industry, but I think it's easy to see just from a lot of people just researching and paying attention is that there is the top talents in AI engineering being offered jobs all over Silicon Valley, and we don't know who has joined the team and who's adding more things. For all we know, this guy, this character, I don't even know his name right now. Maybe he feels like he's not adequately fit for this area and he's moved on. I think these people are more intellectuals and more scientifically engineering based than just us. And I think that they go where they feel like they fit better. So there's a lot of conspiracy out there. A lot of it that's getting onto this Tesla Elon conspiracy theorist that, oh no, like it's not doing well. And I hear that a lot. It's kind of like this polarization. It's either doing really well or it's not doing well. And honestly, it's moving forward. And I think what Omar posted or stated himself that, FSD is doing better than it ever has. So there's something to be said there.
Thank you, Kristen. Wes?
I just want to say I can't hear Meta when he comes up, so maybe I'll drop back down and come back up. I don't know if anybody else is experiencing that.
I'm actually leaving. You can just tell Wes. I actually have to drop anyway.
Okay. Meta's dropping anyway, Wes. But, it's always good, if you can't hear Meta, you probably can't hear other people too. So, let's see. Ashay.
Yeah, hi. Just revisiting the attrition from teams. Yeah, Omar brought up a good point about Karpathy, and I think there is a distinction between the job at Tesla and an AI agent kind of job, just based on the science of AI versus the technology of AI and what Tesla uses it for. The application of it. And I believe that people who might be a little bit more academic, like Karpathy and the other names that Omar mentioned, they may find that this a little too industrial, where they have to reach certain goals and they work on a fairly narrow kind of a, they're not inventing new science with FSD and the Tesla AI team, but they're using what is being developed, the transformers and the neural nets. And that I felt from Andre's talks a little bit that maybe that's the cause for him to leave. And this, I didn't know this gentleman, Mr. Knight, who just left, but it seems like a similar type of motivation where people wanted to go work on sort of more fundamental, science behind AI rather than, compensation or some other reasons. And that was just how I've seen things. And yeah, as as it was mentioned, the leaving of these people in the past hasn't really affected the output we've seen from the AI
Thank you,
team.
Ashay. And thanks, Connie, for joining Patreon. And then we also have Matthew and Tobin back on the speaker board. He was the co-founder of OpenCritic and also worked at NVIDIA and Cruise before. It was part of a great discussion yesterday. Omar, go ahead.
Yeah, I think you can find Andre Karpathy on the Lex Friedman podcast, and he talks about why he left Tesla. He says, "Look, I love Tesla. I'd love to come back someday, maybe, but I felt that I was spending a lot of time doing management stuff, managing the team, not really doing what I love as much." He left and started just doing YouTube videos. Then at OpenAI, he was not really working on any fundamental new science or any models or anything. He was, according to his bio, working on a type of Jarvis, as he put it. So then he left OpenAI and now he's back to making YouTube videos. I think like teaching people is kind of like his greatest passion. So like everybody's going to kind of follow their heart, do what they want to do. But I think there are different pros and cons to different projects. The Tesla obviously is very demanding. You have to really have an insane level of precision. Something like XAI, I think, there's different people who might be interested in both.
Exactly. Nick?
Yeah, so I think we touched on it, but perhaps we can set these like debates up on like maybe like a monthly basis. You could get with all the bears and get the bulls and like coordinate these and actually have them like for 2 hours at once a month.
Yeah, let me think about that. Someone also recommended it as well. And let me think about that. I mean, I am definitely more like I'm definitely for more debates between bulls and bears, more balanced with equal number of people, equal opportunity and everything. But there's also some benefit to spontaneity too. But there's pros and cons to both. So let me think about that, and then we can decide. Matthew?
Yeah, I was just gonna say on Ethan leaving and the XAI talent. I do think it's a bad look given the Cybertruck rollout and that he's cited as the chief of computer vision. I would imagine most of the struggles of getting autopilot and FSD onto the Cybertruck are related to they're now an end-to-end system. They have new camera positioning. They sort of need to retrain the car how to see, given that they have all new cameras in all new locations. And overall, it's just a bad look. It's a reminder that Elon is spread very thin between the values of free speech and X, between getting to Mars and global internet with SpaceX, between electric vehicles at Tesla, medical innovation at Neuralink, and now he's losing AI engineers to XAI. I think that out of all of those endeavors, the AI front seems the least interesting, and I if I'm on the board, I'm like, hey, why are you why are you creating a company that's sort of competing with yourself?
Meta? Sorry, Wes?
Maybe was that Matthew who was talking?
Right.
Ask Matthew, can you see how this could be a good thing? And can you see that it could also be a bad thing? Can you see both sides of it, is what I'm wondering.
Yeah, for sure. I do think that there is some benefit to the changing of the guard. I think that there's a risk with that, though, though this is more my opinion, which is I think someone else even mentioned it. AI talent is incredibly centralized. I mean, these guys are pulling in 7. I've now seen job offers of 8 figures. These guys are the PhD nerds that took their careers or their academic careers way too seriously, and they happened to strike gold as their industry took off. And so I think it is challenging to um, see how losing talent is ever a good thing, unless that talent was not really pulling their weight.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that you could see both sides, because I think that's important. And I get that's your opinion. And just so you know, I've worked for both Tesla AI and I've worked for SpaceX. So I have pretty good firsthand experience why engineers move from one position to another, one company from another.
For sure. I think my point was more that if you were to look at this and say, oh, if XAI didn't exist, this would not really be a news story. And it's only a news story because XAI exists.
I
Well, it
also think
sounds like,
it's a
Matthew, from Elon's reply, it sounds like if XAI didn't exist, the guy would still leave and go to OpenAI. Like, is that a better outcome
Yeah,
for
but
Tesla?
these headlines would not be there. I need
Who
these
cares? I
headlines.
mean, I don't care about the headlines. Omar?
I think you're going to find that people who hate Elon will point to this story and say, look, this is why I hate him. He's a bad guy. But the reality is, people are just leaving all the time in Silicon Valley. People leave OpenAI, people leave Apple, people leave Google. There's tons of opportunities, startups, VCs. People are individuals. They have different things that interest them. So it's a little bit, I think, of a BS news story. And again, I just come back to, you know, does this actually impact the performance of the AI team? Are they not accomplishing their objectives? Are they constrained on engineers? I mean, instead of going to OpenAI, where he is working on a proprietary model that Tesla can never use unless they pay for, he's now going to work at XAI. He's within the family, so to speak. If they need him for something important, they could convince him to come back and help on something. And the models they're training at XAI, they're releasing the weights of for free. And obviously, XAI would grant a commercial license to Tesla. They're not going to sue Tesla. So they're probably going to use these models in their own products, including Optimus. They can work with those teams, have them sort of design it to the specifications they need to do inference locally on Optimus. And I mean, the training runs for these models just cost millions and millions and millions of dollars. And it's not directly related to Tesla's business. So they're basically creating this model that Tesla can use for free, which is, if you look at some of the latest benchmarks, quickly becoming a state-of-the-art language model that's like on par with GTP4, and they want to exceed it. So I don't think it's the end of the world. Obviously, you want everybody to stay on the Tesla AI team, all the smartest people in the world. You want them to be winning over talent from other companies. Generally, losing talent is not a good thing. But I think the results just speak for themselves when you just use FSD. I just drove it this morning. I have the video pinned to my profile. It was perfect. So, I had this perfect drive where it drives all through San Francisco, and you're going to tell me the project is doomed because Ethan Knight left? I don't even know who Ethan Knight is, and I follow this
Well,
stuff every day.
apparently Ethan Knight was according to Kuno Mel's in YouTube Live. So I don't have a second confirmation here, but Ethan is young. He was research intern at OpenAI in 2019. Over the last 4 years, when Ethan was hired, Tesla is Drew says. Yeah, so that's all we know. I mean, I haven't heard about him either.
Yeah,
we
he
have
was at
some people
OpenAI, he
who-
went to Tesla, now he's going to XAI. That's what
Yeah.
engineers do. They go to different tech companies.
Yeah. Junior?
Yeah, thanks, y'all. Yeah, Omar's right. It's ridiculous. But anyways, I was just wondering, a lot of people right now, especially people on Bloomberg, going on there talking about Elon and crying like big babies because what Elon's tweeting and stuff like that. I wonder if these people are going to be doing the same thing in a couple years, because Elon doesn't change. He's going to still post. Are they going to still cry when the company's doing good? I just want to know that.
Yeah. I mean, they got to publish something, right? And I mean, I see it firsthand when I'm, selecting titles for YouTube videos and articles and, seeking alpha and posts on X. I see all the data that come in. And if you just put Elon, multiple times more engagement on your content. And that obviously translates through ad revenue. And that's why they do it. It's simple as that.
All right, thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Wes, Kristen, ACDC.
Yeah, in general, like fear sells. That's why if it bleeds, it leads. And that's how people make their money, with negative clicks, way more than positive. But I think it's fair to say that everybody's entitled to their opinion, subjectiveness, and what have you. And there's just no way to change people's views if they don't want to look at things in a fundamental way. And yeah, this could be good, it could be bad. We'll see what the product ends up being. Largely, it's good because this is just how Silicon Valley works. And I think it's also important to remember that what we're seeing right now is like unprecedented. I mean, people can use GPT-4, but until they drive FSD and like experience this firsthand, you're really not going to understand what's happening. Like it's absolutely jaw dropping what the AI software can do.
Kristen.
Yeah, I appreciate what Wes had to state. I think people need to realize a lot of people that are complaining are the newer Tesla stock investors. They're the ones that weren't there when Tesla wasn't doing so well. They're the ones that weren't there when they didn't know who Elon was or quite agree. But as soon as they could cash and get more, they were there. So I mean, like some people had stated here, it's ironic that it's not doing well, and all of a sudden they're crying and complaining and pointing to Elon. Which I mean, honestly, like if they replace him, do they expect it to skyrocket? Like, I think that's pretty silly to think that. These teams are so big. This company is so huge. There's so many players involved, and I think it's doing exceptionally well, in my opinion.
ACDC.
Yeah, I'm just going to chime in right in with Kristen. Most of the people literally got into the stock probably without knowing enough about the company, the products, the future, the vision, and now they just need a scapegoat, and the media is giving them enough ammo for that. I also just had a quick question on the AI side, and maybe I think Meta dropped off, but somebody else could answer this for me. So when we say that FSD is AI, am I right in presuming that the AI is not running in the car itself, but in the back end in the learning models in terms of training it? Because we're just running the car on an AMD Ryzen processor. So, and if that is the case, if FSD is kind of like arrived, of course, it's going to progress further. But if it's kind of arrived and now it's mostly just curating, data more and more, is it a project that's kind of almost in its completion, or at least on its way? And could be a reason why some of the engineers may be looking for different mentors also.
Wes.
To answer the direct question, AI FSD is trained in a data center, and then in the vehicle, it's running inference, or the trained model is being asked to do the thing that it knows how to do. So it's not being trained in the vehicle, and it's not running on the Ryzen. It's running on a custom ASIC that we call the Trip chip. So there is some amount of compute that's running on Ryzen or whatever compute chip is in the vehicle, but the actual inference is running on the Trip chip in the car. It's not being trained in the car. And the same is true with your phone. If you have an Android phone, your Android phone is running inference on a TPU, an edge TPU chip that's in the phone, and then it's trained on the giant pods that are in data centers. And if you're running an Apple phone, it's actually sent to the cloud, and that cloud is running most likely on Intel CPUs. So I hope that gives you some infrastructure knowledge.
AC, is that helpful?
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
By the way, are you the ACDC that's been on Tesla Motors Club for a while?
Not for a while. I've been a Tesla owner for 6 months, so.
Oh, okay. There was another one like 7, 8 years ago. All right.
Definitely not.
All right. Sawyer, what's new with you?
Not much. Slow
Not
news day for the
much.
most part.
Yeah. So Tesla is going really aggressive with, trying to let people know that Teslas are more affordable than most people think. Tesla North America tweeting about it. Tesla is tweeting about it on my other social platform. I see ads all the time. Yeah.
Yep. I was DMing with a Tesla employee earlier today who, helps with. I don't know if many people know this, but there's like a new Tesla news section of the app. On the mobile app, if you go to like the little 3 hamburger lines on the top right and then click discover, you'll see it. And I think just in general, there's a pretty broad level of there's new efforts to just educate people that are both in the community and outside of the community about all the things that they're doing. I think that's great. I don't really know how much they're spending on advertising. They've expanded their efforts a lot, but it's sort of unclear, what the ROI is on their ads. It's mostly just B-roll stuff. I'd like to personally see them shoot custom content for them. There's still a debate in the community if Tesla should be doing ads. I think people need to ask themselves, does Tesla doing ads hurt them more than it helps them and helps push the mission forward? I don't believe it hurts them more than it helps them. But yeah, I'm curious to see how it progresses the rest of the year because they're obviously expanding their efforts. But I hope on Q2, the next earnings call in a few weeks, they dive into a little bit of the ROI. They did it briefly in January on the Q4 earnings call, but some more info would be good on that.
Shay.
Oh, I was gonna talk about the previous topic on FSD. Just wondering, I've been giving rides to people on FSD since version 10-ish, and different reactions, right, that I've received, and none of them actually made me think that V 3.3.3 might be something that could be released in the wild, and we've had maybe 4 or 5 days of people trying it out. What are the impressions that folks are collecting? Do we think this is or is it going the direction that people are getting their minds blown, or is it more like, okay, this is not for me, and then they may not look at it for 6 months? Or
Yeah. All right. Just a quick announcement. So some people are having some audio issues, intermittent audio connection issues. Okay. ACDC let me know earlier, and a couple of people on YouTube Live. Most people are okay with the current audio setup. Okay. I think what it is if you have Android, you might be having issues. So ACDC says, I logged out and came back, and it's worked since. So try that. And let's see if that works for you. But most people seem to be okay with the current setup. Matthew, are you trying to raise your hand when you're waving at me?
Yeah, the button disappeared. I was also going to say I was also having issues
Are you on a
Android. I'm on my desktop. Yeah, I'm on my desktop now.
So I think desktop doesn't have hand raise, and that's the same problem machine is having too. But the problem with the waving is, it's if I'm not looking at the screen in the moment, I won't know. But
yeah, it's tough. I also have it on my phone. I don't have the button there either. Yeah.
All right. Well, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I took my first FSD 1233 ride yesterday. After the space.
And, wow, that's awesome. Who gave you the ride?
Impressed. A friend of mine who owns a Tesla. His name's Tyler. He's been
that is awesome.
School.
I'm so happy for you.
I was impressed. I think one area that I did also come away with is it is much slower to get from A to B than if he were driving. And the other thing he pointed out to me is he never uses FSD beta. he's done it to like show off, and he knew I would want to. But you know, he has fun driving his Model 3 Performance. And so like for him, big selling point of Tesla as a brand is buying an EV that's just simply fun to drive. And so it's a little odd to him that he would give that up in exchange for, the like just a slower and sort of less safe and I would say objectively worse driving experience. And I've been tweeting about that today.
Wes, and then I think Omar may have a few things to say about that.
How much slower? Can you be more specific, please?
Yeah, I guess we went. Actually, a great example would be stopping at a stop sign. And Cruise, when I worked at Cruise, we experienced this as well. I don't know about you guys, but when I drive, I do not fully stop at a stop sign if there's no one else at the intersection. Like it just feels like such a waste to actually completely stop. And yes, I know I'm breaking the law and I should be better, but the idea of completely stopping at a stop sign, that's one example. I'd say it was also more cautious. It didn't go the speed limit as we sort of got out of San Francisco. We were driving probably 25, 30 minutes. I don't have an exact, like, this is it, but I'd say overall it just felt slower to me versus if he were driving.
So I'm sure that you know what Cruise does when it comes to a stop sign. Do you not?
I do not anymore. I've not worked there for
Can you take a guess?
2 years. We've programmed in the geofence. We know exactly where the stop sign is. We're stopping at the stop sign.
Yeah, but what speed does it come to when it goes through a stop sign?
Oh, complete stop for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. So you know that you kind of left that out. You know that Cruise does that too.
Oh, I was not trying to draw comparisons. I was more saying to an average person, to an average consumer, what is the value prop here? You're going to give up the fun EV driving in exchange for a slower and sort of less safe and still have to pay just as much attention experience. I'm not sure that the average person really feels like this is a good deal.
Right, but you can't actually recall how much slower it was. So it must have not been that meaningful to you, as if you just did this recently. So I'm trying to understand where you're coming from.
It was meaningful to me. I mean, it would be enough to turn it off. If I were in control of the car and I wasn't on a demo ride, I'd say, hey, let's turn this off and just you drive.
Gotcha. Okay, let's go to Omar, see if he has anything to say. After that, Akshay, Mark, then ACDC.
Well, it's funny, in the early days of FSD, it actually did roll stop signs. If there was nobody there, it would only go down to 2 to 5 miles an hour and then it would continue. But the national, NHTSA said, look, you need to stop to 0. So they told them they had to do that. And in the new end-to-end approach, they've had to specifically source very rare clips of people stopping to 0 to help train the model to behave the way regulators want. But this is just sort of the regulatory stance that autonomous cars should stop to 0. As the technology progresses, I fully expect regulators to come around and say, okay, if there's truly nobody there, then you can roll the stop sign safely. And computers, I think, can do that in a much more predictable and safe way than humans can. So you could allow it and still have a very safe driving environment that's also very comfortable. But, that's kind of neither here nor there. In terms of the value proposition, I'm assuming your friend got a free trial, because if he didn't get a free trial, then obviously you paid for it. Doesn't matter if he uses it or not, really. But I'm assuming he got the free trial. And, I think the fact that a Tesla is fun to drive is the value proposition even today. That's why I drive my Tesla. I mean, it's just like nothing else. And you just have this great driving feel. So I don't think anybody's trying to force you to use self-driving if you don't want to. If you want to drive your car and you have fun, go do it. Nobody should be using FSD 100% of the time. I mean, you should definitely be enjoying your Tesla for what it is. But at the same time, if it's just there, if you want your car to drive yourself, just activate the thing and it'll drive itself. You have to go on a long road trip, You want to just sit back and relax and listen to the music and not worry about things. You're in LA and it's rush hour and you're stuck in traffic and everyone's just going 11 miles an hour and you want to just turn on this thing and forget it and not worry about missing a turn, then it's there. So I don't think we really need to convince everybody. The uptake is really surprisingly high. I have 2 million Teslas in North America. They've already got over 400,000 paid users. So we're looking at, at least about 20% before the software was even good. I think the value proposition is going to kind of speak for itself. And what we're quickly seeing is, it's moving from becoming a slow driver to actually being able to drive better than we can and actually being able to get there faster than we can. In the early builds of 12, it was just extremely natural. It was a little too assertive, but I think people are going to be very shocked at how natural it is. It's not going to be slow at all. Like some people have actually, criticized it for being too fast. So they're kind of rolling this out for the first time, so they've kind of limited the speed. I saw that in 12.2. And then as they gain more confidence, they're allowing it to act more naturally. And I think people are going to be shocked at just how human like it is. It's literally going to drive just like a driver. And with its surround cameras and enhanced information about the route, crowdsourced information from the fleet about where construction is, where other obstacles are, it's actually going to be able to get there faster and quicker and more efficiently and drive more smoothly and comfortably than you can. Like I've been giving a few rideshare rides with it, and it's amazing how the riders are actually more comfortable when it's on than when I'm driving. So I think it's just going to win people over. I don't think we really need to convince anybody. If you want to drive yourself, go ahead and drive yourself. But the people who love to drive the most, they have the most need for this thing because they're always out in their car, they're always driving, and everybody occasionally gets stuck in traffic or some situation where, you're trying to think about something else or handle something else and you don't want to just be focused on staying between the two lane lines. So, people who use it, I mean, go ask your friend what he thinks after the 30-day trial. Let's see.
So I was really happy with Matthew's reply because that's kind of what I expect what first time users would feel, getting into the system that it is slower. I have fun driving my car. Why should I hand it over? Because I still have to pay attention and the rest. And this is exactly why I felt that maybe this wasn't the version to kind of spread it out to everyone, because the main thing here is that the driver is still not out of the picture, right? And so you have to make these arguments to people, and that's what I have been doing, exactly what Omar you said, over the past couple of minutes, to everyone that sits in my car, and I had to try to explain them that, hey, in a year I won't have to be sitting here or twiddling the controls every few minutes, because I'm not even going to look at where the car is going, and I'll be on my laptop or whatever. And that's definitely the vision, and you can absolutely see from 12.3 that this is happening. But from the marketing perspective, from the first user perspective, I did feel that, yeah, this explanation will have to be given. And I'm not trying to convince anyone, but then why even get into that conversation, right? Because if this was somebody who bought the system, they already know that they have to wait till it gets perfect. If you're giving it to someone, then they're going
Correct.
to ask you the question, okay, why now? Like it's not like a much better
Thank you.
experience yet, right? So that's the only like the check I was trying to make.
Thank
But
you. We have
still,
other speakers waiting. Mark, then X Phoenix. Sorry, Mark
Yes,
ACDC, then X Phoenix, then Omar.
I appreciate the opportunity, Yaman. I came up because of Matthew's comments. I'm a little bit different than perhaps other people in the room. Obviously, as an employee, I did not pay for FSD. I always wanted it, but I never used it. My friends know this about me, that I literally never use it. Since 12, I'm on my second version of it. I have found it incredible. I found it useful. I've had people in the vehicle with me not knowing that I was using it, and I showed them, and they were like completely fascinated by the fact that I wasn't driving or putting any input. it recently slowed down in front of a raccoon on the street, and it gave me enough time to sort of decide. I did end up taking over in that one just because it was a new situation, and I was a bit surprised. But I have been incredibly fascinated by it. I love using it, and I don't find it to be one of the reasons why I didn't like using older versions is I didn't really want to have to monitor it as much, and I found that it wasn't assertive enough. But I actually find it super assertive. I find it's doing really, really good, and it's just my take is I'm finding it super useful, and I thought I would share that because I think it's absolutely the time for this to go out to more people because I'm seeing a huge difference in how it used to perform prior to this, and it's finally providing a value to me that I will use. I could theoretically use it every day at this point. So I just want to share that and let you know how I felt, like my experience. Thanks.
ACDC.
Yeah, so I just wanted to share my experience too. I just started my trial. I was actually about to get FSD even before the trial, so I'm glad that I get to try it for a month before I purchased it. I would say 98% of it is really good. In fact, some part of the really good is like amazing. But there's still 2% that was a little alarming. I mean, for me, the most alarming moment was where it took a on ramp, a 25 mile per hour on ramp at a 45 mile per hour speed, and then ripped through a tight toll booth at that same speed of 45, only to slow down right after the toll booth to down to 15. So it probably recognized the 15 mile per hour speed limit a little late. That was really alarming for me. And I think if it was anybody else, I mean, they may have just disengaged it at that time and put it away and not used it again. I've watched enough videos thanks to Omar and others, and learned how to disengage it, learn how to, work with it. But I'm just curious as to if anybody has any insight as to why was this just rolled out as a trial right away instead of maybe 3 months down the road when it's ironed out more? Is there some other strategy behind it, or any guesses for any strategy or anything? So
okay. X Phoenix, then Omar, then Jimmy, then Wes. Phoenix, you may unmute yourself and go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so sorry. Thank you, Yaman, for having this macro analyst. Thank you very much for co-hosting. Guys, I'm very happy to hear Matthew went out and tried that. That makes me very happy because I don't own a Tesla, and I went out and I test drove it. And one thing I did say that I would say I noticed is that there's a certain level of trust that new drivers or new Tesla experiences lack from what I hear from all the OG Tesla people. You guys have had the opportunity to see it improve over the course of time. So you have a little bit more trust. Like you see where it started, where it is now. For someone brand new going in and trying it for the first time, they don't have that established trust that you guys had. So that's what I found with myself is that decisions and stuff. So that was like, it was hard for me to do that. But what I would think is that it would grow over time. So and that's what I'm hearing from other Tesla drivers. So just I would say, Matthew, like it's kind of like the process of like learning how to ride a bike. You don't trust that you could do certain things, but then you're in no time doing like a wheelie, so that kind of thing. It's kind of like childlike joy almost, and learning the Tesla brand. That's what I have found. And then you had mentioned something about the AI thing. I know it's a little off topic now, but I would say AI is probably the newest, and technology is like the newest concept in technology. And I think it's a good sign, a good indicator that there is movement within that arena. And whether it's like a Silicon Valley thing or not, to be able to move freely or not, but the fact that Elon's going after the people who are showing the most foresight, the most like prospect in developing it further, and not being held back by fear. I think that's a good quality to look for, and so I frankly am happy about that.
Thank you. And like X Phoenix says, thank you, macro analyst, for co-hosting. Would you like to say anything? Okay, never mind. Omar?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that the purpose of deploying this technology is to make it more reliable. So by having people out there using it, it can improve. We can find all of the things that break it so that we can fix it and not make those things break it, and we can make it driverless. There are people out there who are alive and breathing today because they have this technology. You know, someone who fell asleep on the freeway, for example. If this technology hadn't been allowed out there because it still has some issues, then they would be dead. So it's important to release it in a safe way, continue to improve it, have the fleet find these issues so we can make the system more reliable and eventually driverless. So, you know, someone gave an example of like a toll booth, for example. So, you as an FSD user today, you need to come into it understanding that the system is not reliable enough to drive on its own, meaning it will make mistakes, you know, wrong speed, trying to crash into something potentially. And you need to be watching it and be ready to take over when it makes a mistake because it will happen. Right. So if you're uncomfortable with that premise, then it's not for you. But it's really not that difficult to do. So what you want to do is really practice preemptive disengagement. So rather than letting it go through the toll booth too fast or something like that, you want to actually get to know it really well, like a friend, and know what mistakes it makes, know where it tends to make mistakes, and you just take over ahead of time. So you see that toll booth, you know it's had issues, you watch it more closely, or maybe you just take over, you do it yourself, and then you turn it back on. And guess what? That footage of you turning it off and doing it yourself and then turning it back on, that clip can be used to actually make the model do it itself. So practice preemptive disengagement. Understand this is kind of where the technology is. And a lot of people say, well, why would you release it if it still has these issues? But not letting people have this technology is life or death in some cases, even in its imperfect state. I think it's been important to release it and iterate on it for years. And if you are willing to use it safely and help improve it, you're really helping us get to a place faster where we have a version of the model that doesn't make any mistakes ever.
Thanks, Omar. Jimmy, then Wes.
Hey guys, I've been driving FSD pretty much all day today. My drives are really boring because it works. I don't have intervention. But there is one thing that I've noticed, just to go on Omar's thought here. When I look around, all I see is underage young kids texting and driving around me. And I kind of have this like opinion that has formed over the last couple of days where this needs to be on every single vehicle, whether they license it through Tesla or invent their own. Lane keeping assist only does so much in vehicles. It's not even close to what this is. And if we just all stop for a minute and we say, hey, it's going to be autonomous in the future, let's not worry about that now. This is a huge safety thing. Like, I would rather have somebody in a car that has FSD and texting than somebody who doesn't have it and texting. And the issue is we have laws. People don't care. We have fines. People don't care. You can't change the bad driver, but what you can do is you can assist them with this type of software. And so that's what I've been noticing on my drives. It's not me. It's the people around me on their phones who are constantly glancing down. I want to get away from those people and be as far away as possible. Now, if I have to do it, I at least know, hey, my car's still going to make this turn, or if somebody hits their brakes, my car's going to hit their brakes. Now, would I say this is going to cause more of a distraction? There's that argument, but I don't think so because the car screams at you. It gives you a strike. It alerts you. It's constantly telling you to take control of the vehicle, and no other car does this. My wife's Bronco, when we had it, it had lane keeping assist.
It never stopped if there was somebody in front of you stopping. It never actually made the bend in the road. It would just drift off into the other lane. Would it beep at you? It would just shake the wheel a little bit. And if you were distracted, you'd get into an accident. So I think FSD, people need to wake up, and every single company needs to license this. It's not about full autonomy today, but it is a huge safety feature today that everybody needs.
Thank you, Wes.
It was good to hear about AC/DC's experience, and the 98% seemed like a really good number, because the 2% sounded like it was due to the current version of 12 having 11 software for highway. So just so folks know, when you get on the highway, or even if you take an exit for a highway, that's going to be the 11 stack that's taking over at that point. So 12 is all city streets, and 11 is highway class streets. So I just want to be sure folks know about that.
Machine.
Do you get a consensus for why people think they hurried up and did the FSD trial now versus wait a few months?
No, go ahead.
I mean, given the fact that I would say, well, it's version 12, it's much smoother, that's why they did it. But it's not even including highway. And my thinking is it is related to trying to garner attention for it at this period of time that things are down a bit in the dumps. I think that has something to do with it.
Thank you for your amazing positivity that you bring to the space every day.
I'm consistent.
Yeah. Omar?
Yeah, I think we've got a really exciting pace of improvements coming over the next month. We should have 12.4 shipping shortly, and we're also going to see actually Smart Summon ship this month. At least that's what's planned. So I think showing the users not just this first build of the software, but actually showing them the improvement over time, and showing them this is actually what you're a part of, new features, enhancements that come regularly to your car. I think that's an important part of the selling proposition too. If it's just one update and you're just judging it for what it is, that's one thing. But you're really buying what it is and what it's evolving into.
Sasha and then Sam.
Hey, yeah. Thanks for having me or letting me talk. I totally agree with Omar here, and also with what Jimmy said before regarding safety. It doesn't have to be totally perfect now, but it already saves so many people from accidents. And regarding the other thing that we had before, regarding it being slow right now, I understand that this might be annoying now, but for me, I haven't even tried it yet. I'm over here in Europe, but if it's ready, and still even if it's slow, then I would, would subscribe immediately, because if I can not drive and it'll be like, I don't know, 10, 20, 30% slower, and I can do stuff, I'd take that any time. So yeah, and regarding it being pushed out now, I think, yeah, also agreeing with Omar here that it's we need it to train, and we need people to find out about it. That might be a little too aggressive, but that's probably just an Elon thing. that he saw it's working great, and then or they saw it's working great, and then they thought, yeah, well, let's do the next step and push.
All right, Sam and then Junior.
Awesome. Thanks for the opportunity. I just want to something to mention regarding the FSD, and with that, the hardware, with like hardware 4 and the hardware, I'm not sure if there's been much talk about 5. I'm not too engulfed in the community. I used to be a lot more involved, but with that in mind, is anybody, or I guess I question how far can hardware 4, the current iteration rather, go before it becomes a bottleneck to the progression of FSD? And I know Elon has.
I mean, they're still training for hardware 3. We're like that question is so
Right,
far
right,
out.
and that's where I was getting to. Is I think I remember Elon saying that.
Thank you.
That the hardware 3 was still more relevant, in fact, better than hardware 4. But as far as like the long-term goal goes, does anybody have an idea of?
Okay, thank you, Wes.
Yeah, I'm happy to describe the difference between 3 and 4 and why this question is at least 5 years out, if you want, or we can just let it go.
That's okay. Yeah, go answer the question, please. Thank you so much.
Very quickly, it's running on hardware 3 natively, which means that there's no obfuscation between the code, the trained net that is being run inference. The code itself is let's see, what's a bet? It'll get too technical and I'll have to go on for a while. But the hardware 4 right now is running an emulation, which means that it has to have a virtualized hardware 3 projected onto the hardware 4 chip. And then there is a shim, a piece of code that takes that emulation and allows it to compile for the hardware 4 processor. So anyway, that's a kind of a simple technical explanation.
Thank you. That was very simple. Junior?
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to know, I'm located in Toronto, Canada, and I was at Tesla at Yorkdale last week, and I just walked in just to ask a couple questions because they had the new Tesla Model 3 there, and they're giving FSD test drives just people that walk in. Are they doing that in the States too? Because I haven't seen that nowhere on the Tesla community on X mentioning that. Because I just walked in and they're like, "Oh, do you want to do an FSD test drive?" Do you know if they're
Well,
doing that in the States too?
yeah, that was like I'm just chiming in, but that's like the new order, I would say, from Elon, like recently last week. I think they said from now on everybody buying a Tesla needs to get a free test drive for FSD. Correct
No,
me if I'm wrong.
I wasn't buying though.
I mean, you can go into any Tesla store.
Yeah, you can just walk in.
Ask for a FSD car, and yeah, you've been able to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't know.
I just want to go back to the question on will hardware 4 be enough for hardware 5? We don't know. No one knows for sure because they don't know exactly how big the model is going to need to be to get the highest level of reliability necessary for actual robotaxis, which is probably still 100x. Maybe now it's 50x improvement in reliability versus today, and it's possible. It's possible it happens on hardware 3. I think sensor-wise, in terms of camera quality, hardware 4 I think would definitely be sufficient. That it's more about the compute and memory, and we don't know yet. So everyone tries to speculate, but it's still going to be some educated guesses.
Yeah, but the car you tested, was that? I mean, right now it's all hardware 3 capable cars can run the current software, right?
Exactly. So we don't even know how hardware 4, right, what the limit will be for hardware 4. It's not even close, right? So there's a lot of room to work with still.
Yeah, exactly. And as Meta always says too, once we get to a level that is robotaxi capable software with 5 nines, 6 nines, the software will continue to get more efficient, more optimized. So you won't necessarily need as much compute as it first does when we first get there. Very similar to when you first learn how to go ahead, Michi.
Well, no, I agree. Whatever you first optimize and you finally get that trained solution that's good enough, when you port it to the inference chip, that size of model will come down over time, right? There's a lot of different things they can do. but that trajectory, still takes time, and the trajectory of when people want in their cars and when the compute gets large enough, those things have to intersect somewhere. And so I just think it'd be interesting to see, but it's something to keep note of, not to just assume that it's going to work for sure on hardware 3.
Matthew needs to leave in a little bit. Machine, would you like to say anything nice to him as he leaves?
Well, I don't know much about Matthew. I know he worked at Cruise, so if you, I don't know. Thank you for coming on and supporting the space. Please like, subscribe, and send me $5 for my contribution, making this space real.
That was terrible. Sasha.
That was good. I liked it. Maybe I have a question for Wes. Maybe he can answer. I'm not sure. Like from Autonomy Day in 2019, I think it was. We learned that hardware 3 was fully redundant, and it was like 2 custom chips on the PCB, something like this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it should have been running, or FSD should be running fully redundant, or it was at least planned for that. And like recently, I think I picked up somewhere that hardware 3 was not powerful enough in that configuration, and it's not running actually redundant. Is that true?
No, I don't believe that's true. I'm not sure where you heard that, but if you could point me to it, I'd be happy to read it. There's no way, unless you have the source, there's no way that you'd know that. And you could also put a reader on the chip to see what the power levels are, but you also wouldn't be able to tell that either, because I'm sure it runs at a consistent power envelope. So I don't think that you'd be able to tell at the execution level or at runtime. You'd actually have to see the uncompiled code to know what was actually happening. And believe it or not, you'd have to see uncompiled hardware level code, not just the AI code, because the AI doesn't know that it's running in lockstep. And that's the technical term for running on 2 independent cores at the same time and executing the same code at the same cycle. It's called lockstep. So if you talk about this in the future, and if you can remember that term, it's an easy way for engineers to know what you're talking about. But no, it does run fully redundant. It needs to, because it needs to check these things that are happening implicitly from inference and to explicitly confirm them with 2 separate, completely orthogonal calculations. So that's what's happening.
Thanks. That was really
Machine.
helpful.
Well, I think that came from, I might be wrong, but Green the Only, I thought, had done some
I have
hacking.
Green and about his methods. So what he does is he only sees compiled code. So just FYI, he doesn't have actual access to source. So there's no way he'd know. And as engineers who do compiling of code, which I know that you do, you'd know that he has no way to know that.
I'm not. I mean, I've touched on firmware engineering. I do some, but that's not my area of expertise.
What is your area of expertise?
Well, I don't really have any.
Oh,
that's
I
a
will
problem.
read it. Okay, never mind.
I have a question. Another comment.
You have a question? Oh my god.
No, actually, I'm wrong.
Actually,
it wasn't.
Do you want me to tell you what Green's secret is?
Yeah.
Because I learned this several years ago, is that he has a rooted Model S MCU, and I think it's a 2.0, and Tesla closed this rooting hole a long time ago, but they've never tried to get it from him. And he's never done anything bad with it, but there's nothing that you could possibly do now with it anyway, because he can't reroute it. So anyway, that's his little hack.
All right. Well, he's so generous with his time and just answers to everybody. Doesn't get personal. I learned a lot from him, and as we all have, I think.
Happy. Yeah, there's been not good interactions with him on the forum, which I'm sure you're aware of.
Oh, maybe I'll DM you about it. See if there's anything I'm missing. But all right. Any other questions, comments? This space has been going on for about 2 hours today. Yesterday's space was very rare. We usually keep it to 1 to 2 hours. And if you'd like to support the space, you can do so at the top. Wes?
Can I give feedback from 3.3?
Yeah, please.
Everything I've thrown at it, it's passed. The only thing that it does strangely, and I think I have an idea of why. I don't know if any other folks or engineers that are listening, but it seems to sometimes get too hesitant when it's entering an intersection after a stop sign, not traffic lights, but a sign. And as it moves towards either a creep line or it moves towards the lane of travel, it seems to lose its spatial understanding of the intersection. And so I think that they have this this interaction there between. There must be a handoff somewhere in the net or in whatever the set of nets or however they're doing it. There's a handoff there that isn't working well, and I'm pretty sure it has to do with spatial awareness and areas of interest, because I think the area of interest is changing as the spatiality of the scene is changing as the car starts to turn slightly and move slightly. And there's some interesting interaction there. And so I tried to repeat it and it never actually repeats. So I feel like it's just this spatiality interaction. So anyway, that's my feedback on 3.3.
Thank you, Wes. All right. We have Greg back on the in the space on the speaker board. But before that, sorry, Greg, Machine, did you have something to say about what Wes just said?
Yeah, just speaking of spatial awareness, when I was with, I didn't say anything.
Yeah, but like that's how you start every time. Like that's your marker.
when I was with your mom, she told me you had poor spatial awareness. So it kept getting knocked out in dodgeball when you were a kid. So maybe you can improve over time.
I knew it. All right. Yeah. Somebody sent me a voice note last night, and in the background there was Seinfeld going. I was like, oh. All right. There's a quick note from Bloomberg that I want to get Machine's thoughts on later, but this is about the robotics. Where is my? Oh, okay, never mind. Greg, why don't you go first?
Yeah, just 2 quick comments. The first is version 12 is amazing, but the one thing that I found that I don't like is that auto set speed. I find that when I put it on auto set speed, it does drive a little bit slow. So I set mine to like a 26% offset, which goes a little bit too fast on the highway, but I feel like it drives faster on the side roads. So maybe some people experiencing it driving too slow just could be from that auto set speed. And then just the second comment is I just wanted to thank Omar for his lecture on premature engagementation.
He's not here right now, but I'll pass on your congratulations. All right, Machine, I want to ask you about this. Apple explores home robotics as potential next big thing after car fizzles. The company has teams working on automated home devices. The search is on for new growth sources after EV gets nixed. Apple has teams investigating and pushing into personal robotics, a field with the potential to become one of the company's ever-shifting next big things, according to the people familiar with this situation. Engineers at Apple have been exploring a mobile robot that can follow users around their homes, said the people, who asked not to be identified because this Skunkworks project is private. It's a little creepy. The iPhone maker also has developed an advanced tabletop home device that uses robotics to move a display around, they said. What do you think about that?
I think Apple are losers. I mean, it sounds like they just built a stalker. I mean, first thing, oh, you're gonna build something that follows me around the home? This seems creepy. I think Apple's got a
Yeah,
lot of.
that's what I said. Do you have any original thoughts of your own?
That was my thought before you thought it. You just got to speak first. No, what I'm thinking, original thoughts. I'm thinking Apple has a lot of talented people, right? And they got all this money to spend, so they're just kind of figuring out what's the new hot trend. Just like with electric cars, and they're like, oh wait, this is an interesting thing. Maybe we should try that. We got all this money. That's the problem when you have a lot of money and not a lot of ideas, right? You spend a lot of it inefficiently. And I'm sure they can come up with some consumer robot device that might have value. But so what? There's going to be a massive market for robotic assistive devices. I don't know necessarily that it's going to compete directly with Optimus. It just depends on what you think Optimus is going to be. I think Optimus is going to replace a lot of human labor as a primary market. I'm not as focused on Optimus as a stalker in home device, but yeah, there could be competition there.
Zachary Ferguson in YouTube Live says, Jack Rickard strikes again. Tim Cook is no engineer. He's an accountant. Apparently, something Jack used to say. ACDC.
So I'll second all those opinions. I think Amazon already tried that, or I think they're actually trying it right now. It's a robot called Amazon Astro, which is a little thing on wheels. Looks like a small vacuum cleaner that follows you around. But it was just initial news, and I don't think it's got any uptake on it. So I think they've got a lot of cash to burn, and they're trying to find places where to do it.
All right, ACDC, I have a quick question for you. Pop quiz. Okay, you said a lot of your clients have Apple as one of their top holdings.
Yeah.
And obviously, your finance and everything. What percent of Apple's total assets are cash equivalents, T-bills, long-term investments, like that cash bucket, you think, without looking?
I would say about 50%, if not more.
Yeah, that's spot on. And you're the first person to ever get that question. 50%. Congratulations. That's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, and
all right.
And personally, I don't follow all the nitty gritties. I mean, if you have to look at it, like in terms of my whole profession, every stock itself is probably 0.5% of my focus, because I'm not just focused on stocks and tech sector, just basically overall equity markets, and then also the bond market, and everything else. So I'm not. That's where I utilize research reports. That's where I utilize experts, such as a lot of people in this space, to learn more about certain companies.
Great. Now, let me ask, so, I mean, obviously, your financial statements and DCS and everything, and you're very interested in Tesla. Elon said that he believes majority of the value, intrinsic value, is going to come from Optimus. What do you think of that statement?
It's a very futuristic statement. So it definitely could, but we're looking, how do you put any tangible value on that statement, right? And in terms of also a time value to it. So at what point of time will we have Optimus available at a mass scale to do all sorts of tasks, not just menial household tasks, but actual production tasks and everything? And I think we kind of touched about it yesterday, and I think Gordon actually mentioned that too. But there's a lot of companies that are kind of already on that, Boston Robotics being one. That's all they've done for years and years and years. So it's a very futuristic statement, in my opinion.
Okay. X Phoenix, and I have another question for ACDC.
Just coming from like a working class person, I would just say that like the getting workers in right now is a difficult task. So if you think of it just in terms of like an employee, like thinking of Optimus as a resource for like an employer to have a robot show up to do those menial tasks that workers don't want to do. I think that there is a huge market for that. So I definitely think that that is not, too deep into the future, that will show like a huge growth factor for Tesla. Plus, you have to think about like the cost of it. If the cost of the robot out is less than what it would be to have a worker, and not only the worker but paying their insurance and all of that thing, it's going to be an easier thing for an employer to adapt to than like general population. So I think in terms of factories, that would be a big thing.
Thank you. ACDC, and next question for you is, when you see these drone shots of rows and rows of Cybertrucks, what's going through your mind?
Wait, drone shots of what?
Cybertrucks, drone shots of, rows and Cybertrucks in Giga Texas.
Oh, I personally do not pay attention to that. It's one of the biggest things. So I don't know if you remember, but I said that I've invested in Tesla once, and this was basically advising my clients to buy it. And this was last year when the stock dipped at around 110 is where I built a position on it. It was trading at 35 times earnings, which was literally below Costco. And here's what I looked at. They had just announced a $7,500 credit, okay? And looking at the pricing of it, looking at the inventory, I went into Tesla.com. So this is something that I would encourage everybody to do. If you want to get a gauge on how many cars are being sold, or is Tesla selling a ton of cars, you can look at not just, don't build a model, just go and look at their inventory. It pulls up 200 miles, 2-year zip code of any model. And at that point of time, they were literally flying off the shelf, okay? And that was my moment that I'm like, you know what, at this PE, there's no way they're not going to sell a ton of cars. This is going to be big. And sure enough, it kind of took off. And on the flip side, that's actually kind of one of my concerns right now, is that inventory has ballooned. Okay, so I bought a Model Y in September, a performance model. Those were only about like 4 or 6 of them would pop up in the inventory. You had to kind of like jump and pick your exact color and combination and everything. And then earlier this year, they actually completely went away. So I was like, wow, that's a positive sign, And slowly they've increased in inventory from 10 to 15 to 20. A week or two ago, it was as high as 45 cars sitting in inventory. And as of yesterday, I think it was still 35 cars. And the other concern to me is, we can say that, yeah, Tesla has increased, just announced $1,000 price increase. But if you go look at inventory prices, okay, not build prices, all these cars are marked $4,000 to $5,000 below the price. So the $1,000 increase to me is meaningless. If you're selling your inventory, at 10% less, that means the pricing power is still not there. And in spite of that, they're still not moving. So that's something that I focus on more than, drone shots of Cybertrucks rolling out or anything.
Okay. Fair. And we talked about those topics as well in this space. Machine, would you like to add anything to that?
I think ACDC is my brother from another mother. This guy's smart and paying attention to the real facts on the ground.
On automotive, on automotive. Right.
Well, but it is an automotive company.
Yeah, you guys, that's why I'm kind of like asking question by question to see. But he labeled Optimus as a very futuristic statement, right?
Well, we disagree there. Obviously, I'm right. well-rounded than anyone else in the space. Obviously, I carry the space. We know that.
All right. Let me see if there's anything else.
Yeah, man. Just to clarify that. So when I say it's a futuristic, I'm not doubting the technology. Tesla will get there. And to chime in with Phoenix, I wholeheartedly agree. it's something that's very much needed in today's workforce, and everything. I mean, we're at $20 minimum wage. Maybe, who knows? A few years later, we're going to be at $30. So it's very much needed. But when does that technology actually get deployed? And then when does it get deployed on a mass scale to translate to the bottom line and reflect in the numbers? So when I look at a company in terms of an investment, it has to play out in their earnings, right? And that's exactly what the street looks at. There's a certain part that you can give a premium to for future growth, but when a company has matured to a state that Tesla has, it's really, what have you done for me lately?
Now, so if you built a DCF on Tesla, you would not even put Optimus as a section on there, you're saying, right?
No.
Okay. Because you don't, but so clearly you don't think it's within the next 5 years that's going to be material. Let's assume materiality is defined as $1 billion of profits, at the bottom line generated by Optimus sales or leasing or services, what have you. You don't think that's going to happen in the next 5 years?
I don't think it translates to the bottom line in the next 5 years.
Okay. Mike?
Thank you, Yaman. And it looks like Wes and Omar and Meta are not on the board. So this question is probably best for Machine if he's available. I had a question about certainly FSD's architecture is to generalize these edge cases and apply them literally across the entire world. My question is, do you envision one day that local edge cases that, for example, I run into a very unique scenario of a four-way intersection. 3 of those points have stop signs and 1 does not. And even on version 12, 12.2.3 or whatever it is, it still doesn't handle it. My question is, at some point, do you envision enough memory on the trip computer so that it can start processing local memory so that it can figure out how to handle these local edge cases based upon human intervention so that it doesn't make the same mistake over and over again? Thanks very much.
I think so first of all, I used to think, like a year ago or two, that Tesla would rely on sort of crowdsourced map information to kind of update and provide information about a local environment, like in these sort of cases. But just thinking more about how AI has gone, and just thinking that basically these models are huge compression models, right? Where they're taking every facet of the environment on driving on roads, in this case in the US, and trying to create a model that generalizes that and compress it as much as possible. So if you have cases which there are a lot more examples of, right, which is like a 4-way stop or something, but you find them all over the country, and it learns how to compress this. Instead of having 100,000 cases independently that it has to have memory of, right, it's able to compress it into the most important features that basically describe all those cases, and maybe it's essentially equivalent to just memorizing 5 of them. Now, in your case, it's something so unique that right now there's probably not enough cases in the system for it to generalize. And so there's also the aspect which you kind of alluded to, which is how much memory will you have to increase? How big of the model will you have to make it so that it even allows all these additional cases to be generalized? So there's 2 things there, right? It's more data is one potential limiting factor, and 2 is model size. And I'm highly confident, based on the progress and on what's been going on with transformer learning, that if you give those 2 things, that it will be able to generalize and handle your case at some point, given enough data and enough training time. The question then comes down to how big of a model will they need to have to be able to identify all the cases in the US and generalize them well enough and still have it be fit on the inference compute. So I don't have an answer for
when, at what size model will that happen? Like, I don't know, but I knew fundamentally it can be achieved because it's the same process as what they're doing now. It's just feeding it more data and more parameters, basically, to make the model, denser.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Yeah, there are people in the replies still kind of talking about audio issues and stuff. It happens every now and then. Nothing I can do. Just kind of drop off, try different things, turn off your phone, kind of like kick a couple of times, plug it, unplug it, pray. Sometimes that helps. Machine?
You need to blow on the port, the charging port, and then flip it a few times. This is what you used to do with the NES 8-bit.
There you go. I was going to ask you a question, but I forget now. Oh, what did you think of Elon's comment about licensing the tech to other car companies? We will license the tech to other car companies. FSD.
It's interesting, for sure, because I don't remember what he said like a year ago about that in terms of the present or future tense, but I thought
right
that it was interesting. I mean, I made even a prediction, right, which is not going to happen probably, that by this summer, I believe I said Toyota. I try to pivot from Ford, right? Ford was going to be the obvious one based on the NACS, that Toyota would join. And then I think it was last earnings call where he basically indicated there were no talks with anyone on licensing it, no like real talks. And
right
now he's giving a little more seriousness to it. So I do think someone will. I don't know exactly when it will happen, if it's this year or next. But then the fact is, how long is it going to take for them to actually integrate this into a car? And that part, thinking about how slow these OEMs are, makes me think it's not that interesting. However, it could still move the stock. So it is something to kind of pay attention to.
Right. All right. Any other questions, comments? Please request to speak. Otherwise, we're going to call it a day. This space has been going on for 2 hours and 20 minutes. It's exactly 4:20 in Central Time.
420. You ever watch Beavis and Butthead?
All right. Well, let's call it a day then. Oh, no, never mind. ACDC, I had one more question for you. Do you follow macro at all, or are you mostly micro analysis?
Both.
Okay. Well, then let's talk some macro.
Macroeconomy.
Yeah. We're going to talk some macro. And we have Machine and Mike. This is the... Do we have Yutzi in the space? Let's see. This might be the most... No, he's not here right now. Maybe I can send him a quick request. Let me start this way. What do you think is the probability of a recession starting this year at some point?
I think towards the third quarter to fourth quarter, we could start seeing the economy dip into a recession. If you look at the low-end consumer, there's a lot of pain that we don't see, and a lot of alarms going off there. Okay, and the whole economy, the way I look at it, is it's like a pyramid. Okay, with the low-end consumer being the base of it. Okay, everything touches them. and they're hurting, you know, and not, especially now in the dilemma of where job growth is good, okay, employment numbers are good, the interest rate cuts, you know, last November when the market had kind of bottomed out and we just rallied off huge off of there, it was on the prospects of like 5 interest rate cuts, if not more, for this year. Now we're talking about 3 interest rate cuts, maybe. There's 2. I think a Fed official actually said we may not see any interest rate cuts, you know. So the Fed is really stuck here where, okay, we can't cut rates, but yet we have this low end of the economy and the consumer really struggling, okay. Inflation numbers are still pretty stubborn, and that's just overall inflation numbers. If you look at individual housing and food, those are substantially still high, you know. So I think this, I would really, I'm like, you know, nobody has a crystal ball. I would really be curious to see how this plays out, but I have a fear that the Fed is kind of stuck, you know, between a rock and a hard place, and we could end up seeing, if they stick to their guns, that's what it'll be. You know, they're not going to cut the rates, and the economy does go into a recession, which for a lot of people is a bad thing, but it's also healthy overall to bring the economy back into balance. Okay.
Right. All right. Let's break it up a little bit. So we have Machine and Mike on the board. We're also, you know, we had Yutzi just a second ago, but then he dropped off again. Let's keep this about 15, 20 minutes. We're not accepting any requests to speak for this discussion. Machine?
Yet again, I agree with ACDC, because as you know, we've talked about the various subcategories of inflation, and that overall, I don't really see any serious risks of deflation. The only one was really automotive, and yet there are still categories with decent inflation: housing, the food, especially service, serving out, and other service industries. And so overall, you get a picture where I don't think there's a real risk of deflation right now, where people you have to cut rates from that aspect. Now, from an employment aspect, economy, that might be the case, but the problem is that I think with inflation being a little bit high, you would think, okay, maybe they won't cut. But based on the last FOMC meeting, the way Powell described it, they're seeming to indicate that they're going to cut soon anyways, even if inflation isn't at the 2% level. They're now indicating they want it to get to 2% in the long term. So that makes the way he worded that made it sound like it's going to be okay if inflation's not at 2% this year, even if it's between 2 and 3, as long as they believe it's going down to 2 in over a few years, they're okay with cutting, which to me means the cuts are going to be very shallow right now. I don't think they're going to start cutting heavily. So I think, these are going to be like, yeah, maybe they do 25.25% cuts. And ultimately, from a Tesla perspective, it's going to help a little bit with loans, but it's not going to make a drastic difference. It's going to be more about those huge cuts, right? Are we getting back down to, a Fed funds rate of 3%, 2 to 3%? Like that may not happen for a few years.
Mike, anything to add? No hands mode.
Yesterday, based on the ISM print, the 10-year yield breached its highs for the year, 4.35%. We've got a close to $2 trillion fiscal deficit projected for 2023. Very difficult with a deficit to GDP approaching 8% of GDP. Very difficult to get a recession. We didn't get it last year. I don't think we're going to get it this year. And, if you look at tax withholding, which I think is the most objective predictor of recession in the last 5-10 years, still growing 4 to 5% in real time. So yeah, it doesn't look like there's much of a risk of recession in 2023 with a $2 trillion deficit. That's a lot of excess money creating demand without supply. So it's very difficult to put pressure downwards on employment with that size deficit to GDP, in my opinion.
ACDC, if you were the Fed chair today, where would you place the federal funds rate? Fed funds rate.
Wait, I'm sorry. Can you repeat that again?
If you were in the shoes of Powell today, what would be the federal funds rate?
Where it is right now. And if things look worse, I would be looking to add another quarter point.
Okay, so ACDC says where it is right now with a bias to increase another hike. Machine, how about you?
I would nominally start cutting 0.25 maybe every 3 months and then wait and see. But I would very slowly start cutting, but not a lot.
Mike?
I don't think it matters. I think it's all about the 10-year yield. Markets bottomed at the very beginning of November, and that's when the 10-year yield reached its peak. So I don't really think Fed funds is the North Star when it comes to the economy. I think it's all about the 10-year yield.
And the market believes right now, the bond market believes that the first cut is going to come in June with a 62% probability of a first cut in June. All right. ACDC, anything you'd like to add? Otherwise, we'll end the space. But it's good to know that you have a macro, you follow macro as well, and we can ask, it's always, I do need more macro folks in the space every now and then.
I'm here to help, and I'm glad to learn from all of you.
All right. Well, in that case, thank you very much, everybody. And I will talk to you next time. Take care.